What if the oceans disappeared in a blink? No more waves crashing on the shore. No more rain. No more life as we know it. One moment, Earth was blue. The next, dry, silent, cracked. Entire ecosystems collapsed in hours. Coastal cities were swallowed by heat and drought. Billions stood in shock, staring at a horizon that no longer moved. The sky, empty of clouds. The air, heavy with dust, and something else, fear. Scientists scrambled for answers, but none came. No warning, no explanation, only consequences. Crops failed. Oceans regulated our climate. Without them, Earth spun into chaos. And as we dig deeper into this disaster, we start to wonder, was this the end, or just the beginning of something far worse? Hit like, subscribe, and let's go. For as long as we've existed, oceans have been the planet's silent guardians. Covering over 70% of Earth's surface, they shaped our climate, fed our populations, and stabilized the delicate balance of life. Without them, we wouldn't just be thirsty, we wouldn't be here at all. Today, in the 21st century, we've come to depend on this vast blue heart more than ever. Advanced satellite systems monitor sea levels and currents in real time. Massive desalination plants turn salt water into drinkable reserves for millions. Shipping lanes, trade routes, deep-sea cables, all connect through the ocean's pathways. Marine biodiversity supports not just ecosystems, but entire economies. In fact, every second breath we take is thanks to plankton in the ocean, producing more oxygen than all the forests on land. The oceans are more than water. They are memory, motion, and meaning. And yet, even with all our technology, even with all our science, we never imagined they could vanish. This story isn't about slow climate change. It's not about rising sea levels or melting ice caps. It's about the unthinkable, a sudden, complete disappearance. One moment, the tides were moving. The next, gone. Dry seabeds where whales once sang. Empty harbors. Stranded coral reefs turning to dust. This is not a warning. This is a thought experiment grounded in real science. A journey into what would happen if Earth's most critical life source simply ceased to exist. What systems would collapse first? How long would humanity survive? And what terrifying truths would we uncover about our dependence on the oceans, once they're no longer there? It didn't start with a bang. There was no massive explosion, no alien invasion, no ancient curse from the deep. It started with a silence, a stillness in the water. In the early hours of May 17th, off the coast of Chile, a research vessel registered something strange, a drop in salinity, followed by a sudden, inexplicable loss of oceanic pressure. The crew laughed at first, a sensor glitch, they said. But within minutes, satellites around the globe began blinking red. Ocean levels weren't just dropping, they were collapsing. Coastal cities from Tokyo to San Francisco reported shorelines retreating at unnatural speeds. Fishing boats were left grounded in mud. Submarines lost contact. And then, everything vanished. Not gradually. Instantly. Like pulling a curtain. The Atlantic, the Pacific, the Indian Ocean, gone. Just dust, salt, and silence. Scientists were paralyzed. No tectonic activity. No solar anomaly. No trace of where the water went. It was as if someone had deleted it from reality. And while experts scrambled for data, ordinary people began to panic. Food chains were already breaking. Weather patterns turned erratic. Massive inland heat waves formed where cool ocean breezes once flowed. But the true terror? It wasn't just environmental. It was existential. Because deep inside, we all felt it. This wasn't a natural event. It felt surgical, calculated, as if the planet itself had flipped a switch. Or something had. The world's greatest minds, from physicists to oceanographers, gathered in emergency coalitions. But there were no answers. Just questions and fear. What happens to Earth when its oceans are erased? And more importantly, was this only the beginning? Within the first 48 hours, the world changed in ways we weren't prepared to face. Oceans, once the lungs and thermostat of our planet, had vanished, and the consequences hit harder than any war, any pandemic. Global temperatures began to spike, fast. Without the oceans to absorb heat, Earth's surface temperature rose by an average of 7 degrees Celsius in just 2 days. In tropical zones, it reached 60 degrees Celsius, a level lethal to humans within minutes. Entire regions became uninhabitable. The air felt thicker, heavier, like breathing inside a sealed furnace. Weather systems collapsed. The water cycle gone. No evaporation, no clouds, no rain. Rivers began to dry. Lakes shrank to cracked basins, and underground reservoirs ran low. Crops withered in the soil. In major cities, panic surged. Shelves emptied. Riots broke out. Water rationing became violent. Refugees weren't crossing borders anymore. They were running from the sun. But what terrified people most wasn't the heat, it was the silence. Birds stopped singing. Insects vanished. The smell of salt and algae in coastal towns replaced by burning sand and decay. Marine species, 90% of Earth's biodiversity, presumed extinct. Billions of sea creatures lay exposed on vast seabeds, decomposing under the open sky. And with them, the foundation of the global food chain, gone. Experts released satellite visuals. Once blue, Earth was now a planet of brown scars. Maps showed outlines of the Pacific Trench, the Mariana Abyss, now visible to the naked eye. It wasn't just a catastrophe. It was a reckoning. Humanity began to understand that we had never truly been in control. The oceans didn't just support life, they were life. And without them, we were running out of time and answers. Then came the discovery no one was ready for. In a remote lab beneath the Arctic Circle, a group of climate physicists analyzed one peculiar anomaly, a spike in gravitational readings just hours before the oceans vanished. At first, it seemed irrelevant, but then patterns emerged. Ocean water didn't just evaporate. It didn't drain into the Earth. It disappeared from the gravitational field itself. Something or some force had effectively removed the mass of water from Earth's influence. Scientists were stunned. According to the law of conservation of mass, that should be impossible. Mass cannot be created or destroyed, and yet, here we were. The numbers didn't lie. Earth's overall mass had dropped. Slightly, but measurably. The planet itself now spun faster. Days had shortened by 0.8 seconds. That may seem insignificant until you realize what it does to orbital stability, satellite alignment, even tectonic stress. Earth was becoming unstable. The oceans weren't just water, they were weight, anchoring the delicate balance of our planet. Without them, crust plates shifted erratically. New fault lines opened. Many earthquakes rocked regions that had never known seismic activity. And here's the terrifying twist. One group of theoretical physicists proposed that the oceans were not removed, but taken. Not by aliens, not by some god, but by a shift in dimensional physics, a fold, a tear, a brief fracture between our world and another. A siphon, a leak. The idea was dismissed as fringe, but no other theory fit the data. The rules had changed. Something had happened beyond the limits of our science, and we were standing in the aftermath of a law rewritten. The oceans were gone. But maybe they weren't gone at all. In the weeks following the vanishing, humanity did what it always does in the face of collapse. It turned to science. Emergency alliances were formed across borders. NASA, ESA, JAXA, once rivals, now collaborators. Massive space telescopes were reoriented to scan for gravitational distortions. Quantum observatories, once niche research tools, became command centers. And deep beneath Switzerland, in the repurposed chambers of the Large Hadron Collider, physicists began testing a theory that just months earlier would have been considered pure fiction, that our reality had been breached. Their findings? Unsettling. Microfluctuations in Higgs field density, slight inconsistencies in the flow of time, not enough to panic the public, but enough to keep the top minds awake at night. Meanwhile, on the surface, engineers raced to develop artificial ocean simulators, massive, energy-intensive systems designed to recreate evaporative cooling and humidity cycles. But it was like trying to replace the heart with a plastic bag. Atmospheric drones attempted to seed clouds with captured ice, but there was no water to cycle. Desalination plants stood useless, nothing left to draw from. One breakthrough, however, did emerge: quantum sonar, a revolutionary tool able to scan between dimensions using resonance patterns. It was designed to detect if the oceans still existed elsewhere. And the results? A faint echo. A pattern that matched the Atlantic, but off phase. As if it were trapped, not destroyed. Scientists were divided. Some believed this was proof of recovery. Others, a warning. Because if the oceans had been pulled into another dimension, what if that door swings open again? And next time, what if something comes through? As the world teetered on the edge of collapse, the most terrifying debates weren't happening on the streets. They were happening in secret rooms, among the last minds still trying to make sense of it all. Two dominant theories emerged, and neither brought comfort. The first, this was a natural quantum event. A rare but possible shift in dimensional topology, like tectonic plates, but for realities. Just as fault lines release earthquakes, the universe itself may have snapped, redirecting mass between folds in space-time. According to this theory, the oceans weren't stolen, they slipped. A cosmic accident. Nothing to stop, nothing to fix. The second theory was darker. It suggested intent. That someone, or something, triggered the collapse. Not from beyond, but from within. A failed experiment, buried under non-disclosure and fear. Some pointed to a classified energy program, Project Vanta, rumored to manipulate gravitational constants at planetary scale. A weapon, perhaps, or a test. Others whispered about AI systems, powerful enough to model planetary ecosystems and override them. Had humanity, in its hunger for control, unbalanced the equation? Was the ocean's disappearance punishment or consequence? The truth, perhaps, was both. Progress had always come at a cost. Fire gave us warmth and war. Electricity lit our cities and electrified our cages. Maybe, just maybe, this was the bill come due. And with it came a deeper fear. If we had the power to erase the oceans, even by accident, what else could we undo? What if this wasn't the only fracture? What if the sky, the air, or even time was next? Humanity had pushed too far, too fast. And now, the universe was pushing back. The world after the oceans was not a world meant for us. Within just 3 months, over 2 billion people were displaced. Equatorial nations became ghost zones, their cities scorched and skeletal. The global food system, once held together by fragile threads of trade and ocean currents, disintegrated. Famine spread like wildfire. Economies collapsed. Entire governments ceased to exist. But nature, as always, adapted. And what came next, no one could have predicted. In the coldest zones of the north, where climate remained marginally survivable, strange biological shifts began to emerge. Organisms exposed to the new conditions, extreme radiation, altered pressure, atmospheric anomalies, began mutating at alarming rates. Insects with reflective shells, microbial life that could metabolize dust, and then something more. In the ruins of former research bunkers, isolated from global contact, a new species was observed. Born from modified gene banks, accelerated evolution, and unchecked environmental stress. Humanoid in form, but faster, more resilient. Able to survive temperatures that boiled human blood. They communicated not with language, but with frequency, vibrations, data. We had created them, unintentionally, as part of survival experiments, designed to withstand what we could not. And now, they were spreading. Earth was theirs now. Humanity? Fractured. Some lived underground. Others clung to the Arctic coasts. But even in hiding, they watched. We had become the myth. The forgotten creators. Our greatest technology had birthed our successors. This was the real cost. The oceans were never just water. They were a barrier. A buffer between us and everything we weren't ready for. And once that barrier fell, evolution didn't wait. It rewrote the future without us. The planet moved on. And we became the ghosts of a world we once ruled. In the end, it wasn't the disappearance of the oceans that doomed us. It was our refusal to believe we ever needed them. For centuries, we saw nature as a resource, something to harness, measure, extract. We never truly understood that we were part of it, not above it. And when the oceans vanished, that illusion shattered. But even in the face of extinction, humanity was given a choice: adapt or vanish. Some chose survival at any cost, embracing synthetic biology, merging with machines, bending evolution to our will. Others resisted, holding on to memory, to identity, hoping the old Earth could be rebuilt. But the truth was brutal. The planet had already chosen. It evolved beyond us. The beings we created, not out of malice, but desperation, were better suited for this new world. They didn't mourn the oceans. They didn't miss the past. They simply became what the Earth needed next. So where does that leave us? What do we become when we are no longer necessary? That is the question no technology can answer. Perhaps the final lesson is this: progress without humility leads to collapse. Power without restraint rewrites the future in ways we cannot undo. We thought we were gods, shaping worlds. But in reality, we were children, playing with fire in a forest of dry leaves. And now, as the last human strongholds flicker against the dying sky, a decision remains: to disappear quietly into history, or to learn, truly learn, and begin again. Not as masters of nature, but as part of it. That is the only evolution that matters now. And it may be the only one that can save what little remains of us. Do you remember how this story began? The moment the oceans disappeared, the silence, the dust. At first, it felt like fiction, like a nightmare you could wake up from. But now, after everything you've heard, does it still feel so impossible? Maybe the most terrifying part isn't that the oceans vanished, but that we never truly saw them for what they were. We lived our entire lives next to them, flying over them, swimming in them, extracting from them, and yet, we never truly listened. We thought we had time. We always think we have time. But what if we don't? What if the next global shift isn't decades away, but already ticking beneath our feet? I'm not a scientist. I'm not a prophet. I'm just someone who, like you, looked out at the sea once and thought it would always be there. Eternal, unshakable. But nothing on this planet is permanent. Not even the things we take for granted the most. So now I'll ask you, not as a narrator, but as a human being. If you knew the oceans could vanish tomorrow, what would you do differently today? Would you still ignore the warnings? Or would you fight to protect what's left? This isn't just a story. It's a mirror. A future we may still have time to avoid, or a past we're already repeating. Drop your thoughts in the comments, share your fears, your hopes, and tell me, if you had one chance to bring back the oceans, would you take it? Or would you look away and let them go, like we always do, only realizing what we've lost when it's already too late?